If board members can take their seats, we can get started. Thank you. Finer point, if Mr. Stollard would please take his seat, we can all get started. With pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the September 21st, 2023 meeting of the Board of Directors for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll and read any message you may have?
Yes, good morning. As you just heard, this meeting is being recorded. For members of the public that wish to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, or if you're participating telephonically, please use *9. All right, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Director Baines?
Present.
Bradford?
Here.
Branska?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Here.
Burris?
Here.
Thank you. Chapman? Here. Desmond?
Here.
Berlant for Dowden Calvillo? Here. Frost? Absent. Gallardo?
Here.
Gog? Absent. Gore?
Here.
Early for Guerrero?
Here.
Harris?
Here.
Haudeshelt?
Here.
Jennings?
Here.
Joyner? Nisley?
Here.
Kozlowski?
Here.
Lauren?
Here.
Lozano?
Here.
Sander? Absent. Schaefer?
Here.
Stollard?
Here.
Soon? Absent. Thomas?
Here.
Vang? Absent. Villegas?
Here.
West? Vice Chair Saragosa?
Here.
Chair Kennedy?
Here.
And ex officio member Tucker for Benefall.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And before we get started with the meeting, I want to make some announcements regarding the nominations for next year's board leadership. First, I want to thank the following members for agreeing to serve on the nominating committee. Directors Baines, Haudeshelt, Jennings, Lozano, Villegas, and Thomas, who will serve as the committee chair. Also, if any other members are interested in throwing your hat into the ring for next year's vice chair, please do so by forwarding your name to Lynette Espinoza, our board clerk, no later than Friday, October 6th. All nominations received. The committee will meet to discuss candidates, and the committee recommendation will come before the full board on December 21st, meeting for a vote. So again, that deadline is Friday, October 6th. Please get your name into Lynette Espinoza. Thank you. And with that, we will move to public comment. This time we'll take public comment for any item that is not on our agenda. Is there any member of the public that's present today that would like to address the board on an item not on the agenda?
We do have one member of the public with their hand raised in Zoom.
Okay.
All right.
Please
I'm gonna
call that person.
Bring Alan Hirsch in one moment.
There it is.
Alan Hirsch, you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Alan?
Mr. Hirsch? You are now muted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you very much. This morning at 7 a.m., I went to my the swimming pool to go my exercise swim. It was canceled. I was told it was. I looked up because of air quality. So I'm sure team practices for kids were canceled all over the region because of air quality. I asked what was going on, so I googled why is there air quality today. It said this morning. It said this morning there is a big air bubble over the region. And because we have moderate air quality problems, and it says, quote, air quality in Sacramento is some of the worst in the nation, ranking in the top 10 worst levels of ozone in particular levels. Unhealthy air quality is largely the result of transportation exhaust destruction. Sacramento has been out of conformity for 25 years. I testified before this board when Tom Stollard from Yolo County was a representative 25 years ago, and the Sacramento Bee wrote an editorial said that your plan from 25 years ago was a mutual suicide pact, both economic and congestion. Yet you're still continuing to plan to widen freeways. Now, I understand congestion is an important issue here in Sacramento, but then why would you widen a bridge to let another 12,000 more cars into the Sacramento region? Why are you widening the causeway to let more cars into the Sacramento region at rush hour? I don't understand what your priorities are. I understand why the business community wants it because a toll road that is very elitist. They can afford to pay the toll for the extra capacity. But those of us who breathe air and the kids and those who are concerned about climate change are being ignored in the priorities here. There is no one is questioning the status quo. We have Caltrans who loves to build freeways, but we need
You
to
have 1
turn
minute
the
remaining.
battleship around if we're going to address our climate change. Caltrans is predicting a 7-foot sea level rise over the next 100 years, which is going to put the Capitol Corridor train service out of service, flood Highway 37, and who knows what else it's going to cause in Yolo County. We still have an inferior transit system in the I-80 corridor. It's a $9 ticket to go from Davis to downtown Sacramento. That's not transit, that's elitist sort of things. And I don't find, and so putting a toll road is another elitist sort of thing. We still do not have a good transit system on the I-80 corridor, and yet you're widening freeways again, and we know we have an air quality problem. Please question your assumptions. Please stop siloing air quality and away from the freeway widening. Thank you very much for reconsidering the toll plan for the region and the widening of the I-80 freeway in Yolo County to let 12,000 more cars into Sacramento at rush hour. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Hirsch. Are there any others?
There are no other public comments.
Okay, and again, one more time, is there anybody in the audience? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you. We will move to consent. At this time, is there any member of the board, having reviewed the consent calendar, that would like to have anything removed or comment on an item that is on consent? Seeing none, are there any members of the public that would like to address the board on any item on consent?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Howard Shell seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Did you get those, Mr. Clerk? All right,
I did.
then please call the roll.
Yes. Directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Baines,
They're on here.
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris,
Aye.
Chapman.
Aye.
Desmond.
Aye.
Berlanford Dowden Calvillo. Frost, absent. Gallardo.
Aye.
Gog, absent. Gore,
Aye.
Early for Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Howdeshelt,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Nisley,
Yes.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lauren,
Aye.
Lozano,
Aye.
Sander, absent. Schaefer,
Aye.
Stollard,
Yes.
Soon,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Bang, absent. Villegas, West,
Yes.
Vice Chair Saragosa,
Aye.
and Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Corliss, how are we doing on our next item?
We're doing great. We have our guest speakers here.
All right, fantastic. At this time, we're going to hear some remarks from Jesus Tarango, the chairman of the Wilton Rancheria. It gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Chairman Tarango. We're honored to have him here this morning, especially just one day before the 56th Annual California Native American Day, happening right outside at the Capitol tomorrow. As a regional government entity, SACOG has a responsibility to develop and sustain productive government-to-government relationships with tribes in the region. We're currently working to build our internal capacity and approach to government relationships to strengthen opportunities for tribes to engage in SACOG's planning, programming, and policymaking processes. Furthering our understanding of how our government counterparts are interested in engaging and how we can ensure it can be mutually beneficial. Just like we know our own communities, we live and work and play across SACOG member jurisdictions. The same holds true for Wilton Rancheria tribal members. We have invited Chairman Tarango today to continue to build our government-to-government engagement through understanding more about the past, present, and future of Wilton Rancheria, so we can be a better partner. And I'd like to hand it over at this time to Chairman Tarango, and I thank you for joining us today, sir.
Tangi Como. Kuchi Kalupa, Kani Oyaset, Jesus Tarango, Tribal Chairman of Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe. I want to say thank you, obviously, to my fellow Alpha who allowed us to be here today. Some of the words you just said, government to government relationships, right? Hasn't always been a good thing for tribes in our government. But being here today is one of those things that I stand for in trying to educate our communities that we're within. Obviously, our people are the original inhabitants of this land, but as it is today, we share this land. And I think it's very important for us to understand where we come from and who you are and what is your culture, what was your lands, what did you eat? Because sometimes when people talk about my people, they talk about us in past tense. And we're here today. We're still doing the same things that we've done for thousands of years, yet maybe not all communities have learned about that. So today I brought with me Dalton Brown, who's my Director of Administration. We're gonna kind of just talk a little bit and give you guys a little bit of history about Wilton Rancheria, kind of, who we are, what we do, and definitely gonna talk a little bit about who we are today. And I think that's the important thing on how our community could help this community, right? Which is our homeland. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we really want. But Wilton Rancheria, we're about 10, 15 miles here, southeast of here. We roughly have about 1,000 members right now. We're a very, very young tribe. We have almost about 400 youth. Our elder population tends to stay between, I would say, the 50 and 60 range. Obviously, being a sovereign nation, we're able to set our own guidelines on what a elder is. And so for us, it's the age of 62. And so again, that's, I highlight those two, the youth and the elders, because in our community, those are the two most important demographics for our people. The old ones who have that wisdom, they have that knowledge and the experience to pass on. That's their obligation to our people, is to pass that on to the next generation. And I bring up our youth because being such a young tribe, we have great opportunities to teach that youth and the other communities' youth to understand one another, and so that they could have a better future than maybe what we've had or maybe some of our experiences. But really want to highlight those two because those are what are important to our people, making sure that they have everything that they need. But again, we're primarily made up of Miwok and Nisenan people. And so when I say Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe, I say that in today's world, that's what it is. That's a fact. We're the only federally recognized tribe in Sacramento County, but we share this land with many other tribes. And when you talk about tribal history here in California, I want, if you could walk away with anything today, is to not think about what it is today, what Sacramento is today. Think about the time periods and what you're talking about when our people were here. Our people had many, many different incursions of people coming into our territory. And so the makeup of what this land looked like in the early 1800s looked a little bit different and after 1850, right? Looked a little bit more different after 1880. And it totally looked different after the 1900s. And so I say that because there's a rich history here in Sacramento with our people. And again, we're a river people. Our rivers were our boundaries, so to speak. So how you have the American River coming into the Sacramento, those are almost natural boundaries between the Southern Maidu and Nisenan people along the American River, and then primarily the Plains Miwok people that were here in Sacramento. But I also want to make sure that I say here that looking at those different time periods, and when you think about the Spaniards that came in with the missions, right, or the Europeans that came in here, our people had to band together. And so that's the makeup of Sacramento, really, is a lot of these Miwok and Nisenan people having to come together because maybe their tribe or their homeland was just taken away. When you talk about Wilton Rancheria, we weren't established until 1929. And we were, and this is actual, the actual language, vagrant Indians. We were vagrant Indians. They rounded us up. My great-great-great-grandfather, Alec Blue, is on documents saying that he was with the farm workers migrating, or else I might have been up in Shingle Springs, right? Because Shingle Springs also has a tie to this area, right? But they were pushed out in 1917. My people were pushed out in 1929. And so obviously wherever we landed up, that's where we landed up as of who we are today. But I want to say that because I want you to hear from me that this isn't just Wilton's territory. This is shared territory. However, we are the only federally recognized tribe in Sac County. And so we take a big responsibility with that as it ties to the land. And so with that, I'm going to let my Director of Administration, Dalton Brown, kind of give you a little bit more breakdown of our history. And then I'll probably say a little bit more at the end. But again, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here. It's a beautiful thing when I'm able to share a little bit about who we are. Because it's definitely important for us and where we're going is to have an understanding of what our communities are. So, tangi komo.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. As Chairman Tarango said, my name is Dalton Brown. I'm the Director of Administration for Wilton Rancheria. What that means is I oversee all of our governmental operations that provide services to tribal members. Departments of Health, Education, Indian Child Welfare, Cultural Resources, Housing, Finance, and pretty much anything else Chairman Tarango asked me to do. I'm also a little bit of our resident history nerd, which is why I have the honor of diving into the history of Wilton Rancheria and its people. As Chairman kind of alluded to, the people of Wilton Rancheria have been here since time immemorial. There's not a time that exists that our people cannot tie themselves to this land, whether it be through creation stories coming from Mount Diablo, coming from the Sierra Nevadas, coming from up north in the Buttes. Our people have been here. And what's important is that we have continued to be here. And I'll talk about the history of incursions one after the other. I'll start with missionization. In 1811 was the first recorded baptism at Mission San Jose of a Plains Miwok man. By 1836, there was over 3,000 baptisms of Plains Miwok people at Mission San Jose. For those of you who have read or studied on the mission system in California, it's an integral part of what made California, California. But we also have to acknowledge that it was not a good space for indigenous people. It was one of the foundations of slavery in California. It was one of the spaces that encouraged violence against indigenous people, beatings. We've heard horrific stories of what it meant to leave a mission, to try and leave a mission, and the stories of what missionaries would actually do to women and children to try and make the men come back to work. And they're horrific stories, and I won't share them here because I think it's important that we keep this moving forward. But I'd encourage you to read up on that history. California was also marked in 1833 by a significant malaria outbreak brought in by a fur trading excursion up north, and it spread throughout California. And later in the 1840s and 50s, as we made our way into the gold rush era, there are documents of explorers coming through California, in particular the Sacramento area and the San Joaquin Valley, talking about coming across indigenous villages where there was no one but skeletons under shade trees because of how bad the malaria outbreak was. And something else to remember is post-missionization, this is what people returned to. When they left the mission, when they tried to come home to their indigenous villages, they came home to wastelands. They came home to places where their people were no more. They had no access to the history, the culture, their language, what it meant to practice and be an indigenous person at the time. And that's where our history really starts to begin of integrating with one another. Historically, our communities made themselves up of tribelets across the rivers. In particular, I'll talk about the Cosumnes River. All the way from the fork of the Cosumnes up in the Sierras, all the way down to the Delta. If you are within a couple miles of the Cosumnes River, you are near a village site. That's just an indisputable fact. And it's a beautiful thing because we still have ties to that river. And the tribelets that made up the people along that river began to band together to fight back. We talk about Amuchamni was a significant village on the Cosumnes River out near Rancho Marietta and Slough House, where I currently live. They're one of the strongest and most prominent who fought back against John Sutter, who established New Helvetia, and as we know it here in downtown, in 1839. And his history is, again, one of complication. We've seen over the years the moves away from honoring him as an individual because of the violence that he promoted. And when we think about what it meant to band together against such a powerful force who had ties to military, who had ties to government, who was able to flex his political muscle to get what he wanted in the Sacramento area. And the fact that our people survived that is a testament to their fortitude and their strength. Obviously, the gold rush, I don't think I have to talk that much about it. We're familiar with it. We actually, the few of us who walked in this morning, kind of had a little side eye and chuckle at the foundation of the sculpture in the foyer of the building downstairs. So the foundation, it's a miner. I'm like, well, we can throw an indigenous person in there too sometime, but we'll talk about statues later. But when we talk about the gold rush, we talk about really probably the most significant event in California's history that really decimated indigenous people. We think about the miners themselves staking land claims. We think about the violence against the land, the strip mining, the hydraulic mining that occurred, blasting away entire mountainsides of sacred sites, access to cultural resources, destroying rivers, destroying natural waterways, destroying access to fishing, hunting, natural resources that never came back. There are still scars across the state of California of gold mining. I live on a property that was gold mined, and you can see clear as day where it was scraped down to bare volcanic rock searching for gold. And what it meant for indigenous people at the turn of the century, or not the turn of the century, but as statehood came about, Peter Burnett, our first governor, openly called in his first address to legislature, he said, a war of extermination between the two races is to be expected until the Indian race is no more. And actually authorized in $1850 $1.1 million for the bounties of indigenous people in California. This is 1850. This is statehood. 1851, seeing what was happening in California, the federal government sent what they called Indian agents to the state to negotiate a series of treaties. They negotiated treaties from all the way to Oregon, all the way to San Diego. They negotiated 18 in total. And the one that was signed here was called the Treaty at the Fork of the Cosumnes. It was signed with the Wapumnes people up the Cosumnes River towards the Middle Fork. And that treaty ceded hundreds of thousands of acres to the indigenous people of this area, flowing down the Cosumnes River, due south, back up, was at the Mokelumne River, almost towards Calaveras County, and then from Calaveras County across Amador County back to the Middle Fork of the Cosumnes River. Hundreds of thousands of acres. With promises of food, promises of textiles, everything that indigenous people were due at the time under the treaties negotiated with the federal government on that nation-to-nation, government-to-government relationship. These were signed, these were taken back to Washington, D.C., and they were never ratified. So every single promise that was made in every one of those 18 treaties meant nothing. So instead, there was the Act for Protection of Indians, which actually authorized California individuals to call into service, I'll use service in air quotes, the work of an indigenous person who they accused of a crime, who they accused of having alcohol, who they accused of being somewhere they shouldn't have been. They could take them to court, and instead of fines, jail time, anything like that, it was like, no, you're going to come work for me. And that was California Indian slavery. We fast forward a little bit into the early 1900s. Our people moved around. They sought refuge where they could find homes. And as Chairman alluded to, a lot of that was with migrant farm workers across the Sacramento Valley. By 1928, 1929, under the Indian Self-Determination Act, the tribe was able to organize itself as a federally recognized tribal government with all the rights and responsibilities due to it under the Constitution of the United States. As those involved in government, I think if I asked everyone, do you believe in the Constitution? Everyone here would raise their hand and support it wholeheartedly. And if you do, I would say that you also support tribal sovereignty. That's the first document in the United States history that actively supports indigenous sovereignty and recognizes indigenous people as a distinct and separate group from anybody else in the United States. So when you think about the responsibilities that came with that, the tribe was able to organize itself, have a government, have elections, have a constitution. They governed themselves out in Wilton on about 40 acres of land as a self-sufficient community. Everyone had their little piece of land, beautiful little homes, and functioned as a very strong little community. And obviously, going from hundreds of thousands of acres that were entitled to the people in 1851 to 1928 and 40 acres is a pretty rough land deal, but we made it work. Our people made it work because that's what indigenous people have done across time. 1928, beautiful community. By the mid 50s, late 50s, there was this turn in the federal government of looking towards areas where the government could rid itself of any what it considered extra spending, anything that it didn't need to be supporting. And rancherias in California, which you'll notice we're not a reservation, we're a rancheria, we have no treaty protections. So we have no treaty protections under the United States, which are the supreme law of the land of the United States. So without treaty protections, the federal government passed the Rancheria Acts, which terminated the federal recognition of over 40 tribes in the state of California, making every single person who was a member of those tribes no longer Native American. Without federal recognition, there are no legal rights to sovereignty, to nationhood, to self-sufficiency that are given and empowered to distinct sovereign nations. So by 1959, when the tribe was federally terminated, it meant that everyone was just a normal landowner. And the intention was, you have your small parcel of land, you have a white picket fence, dog in the yard, you are a nuclear American family, you are not part of an indigenous community anymore. And it was a rough time. People moved away. You'll see, going from 40 acres in Wilton, small community, just, about a dozen parcels of land, spread out across Sacramento County, Amador, Calaveras, Placer, El Dorado, all over the place. People kind of scattered to the wind because they were surviving. They were integrating with other communities. We have a beautifully strong community integrated into South Sac, who they've woven themselves into the fabric of what South Sacramento is. And the same goes for all the other counties in the area. We have members in all of your counties, all over the place, all of your jurisdictions. We look then to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where some amazingly strong people who I'm honored that, Chairman's mom being one, and Chris Franklin's family, our Director of Economic Development being another, their ancestors, their grandparents, their parents fought the fight for federal recognition. They were selling Indian tacos and fry bread at powwows for $5 a pop, trying to pay for attorneys. And that started in the 80s and 90s. And they fought that fight for decades, lawsuit after lawsuit, after every opportunity they could go after to earn and be given that federal recognition status once more, so that the tribe would have access to those resources that are due to indigenous people. It didn't happen until 2009, specifically June 8th, 2009. Finally, Wilton Rancheria v. Salazar, who was the Secretary of the Interior at the time, a lawsuit stuck, granting Wilton Rancheria federal recognition once more and recognizing that they were wrongfully terminated in the 50s and early 60s. After 2009 and being re-recognized, obviously a major celebration, the tribe reorganized itself, looking at historical documents, and was able to pass a constitution and become a functional sovereign government once more. So by 2011, we were able to start creating departments, creating services, bringing people back to us, and really what it meant, going after those federal dollars we did not have access to for over 50 years through Indian Health Services, through the federal government, through all of these mechanisms that are built in place that the federal government by law has a trust responsibility to support indigenous people in the United States. For 50 years, didn't have access to those. But once more, come 2011, we did. And since 2011, that's not a long time. As Chairman said, we are a very young community. We are still figuring some stuff out. But what's beautiful is how far we have come in that short, just a little more than a decade. We've been able to organize ourselves into departments of education, social services, cultural resources, housing, health, and we do more than that too. We have beautiful community programs that are meant to show folks who we are. We do an annual breast cancer run walk at Elk Grove Park, brings hundreds of folks out into the community to just raise awareness in the importance of early detection of breast cancer in our Native communities. We do phenomenal work in our community, and that's really been empowered by the land that was placed into trust in 2017 on behalf of the tribe in Elk Grove. Being a landless tribe, when we were re-recognized, it was like, yes, you're a tribe, you have nowhere to exercise your sovereignty. Fortunately, working with multiple jurisdictions, City of Galt was involved, City of Elk Grove was involved. Eventually, we landed on land in Elk Grove that we had historical ties to once again establish a land base. And what that allowed us to do was establish an economic base. As you know, last August we were proud to open Sky River Casino, the area's premier gaming destination, we like to think. And what that has done for our community really can't be. I know I had a lot of time to talk, but it can't be captured in just that short amount of time. What it's done for our community for self-sufficiency, for people being able to get out of debt, buy homes, get apartments, get off the streets. We have dozens of folks who are really struggling with unstable housing and homelessness, who we are seeing getting into apartments, who we are seeing getting into stable housing situations because of what that facility has done for our tribe. And it cannot be overstated just how important that tribal sovereignty is for us to be able to protect our citizens. The same way that your governments, that your sovereigns work to protect your citizens, we're able to do the same for ours. And that's a beautiful thing. And while we are a nation within a nation, a sovereign within a sovereign, we are really proud of our sovereignty. And something that's really important to us is land. We as a tribe that was dispossessed of land, we want it back. There's movements out there, hashtag land back. If you're a social media person, I encourage you to search it. Just the opportunities that are out there for tribes to start reclaiming ancestral territories, ancestral lands that were taken. We're talking about sacred spaces. We're talking about entire villages that we now, through archaeological records and through oral histories, we are able to start reclaiming those spaces and bringing them back into tribal ownership. And that's a beautiful thing. We're able to start talking about cultural education centers. We're able to start talking about bringing our people of Sacramento County. I went to Sutter's Fort as a kid. My dad told me the real history before I went to Sutter's Fort as a kid, and it was a really unfortunate, really uncomfortable field trip. And we don't want people to have to deal with that. Instead of learning that somewhat revisionist history of how good John Sutter and how good that era was, bring them to our cultural education center. Learn about the indigenous people of the land. Learn about the relationships with the land. Learn about the indigenous plants, animals, everything that made California what it is, what made it so beautiful. And we're really proud of the fact that we can do that work. And it was told to me, there's a saying from the Southwest that wisdom sits in places. And we really, truly believe that. And those places are what are important to us. The more we can get access to our ancestral homelands, to our ancestral cultural spaces, the more we're able to share our wisdom. We're able to bring it back to our community. That generation of folks post-termination in the late 50s into 2009 when we were re-recognized didn't have access to the tribe as a cultural resource. We want to bring culture back to everyone. We want to bring it back, everyone to know language, everyone to know songs, to know baskets, to know tools, to know their tribal history. And we can do that now. And we are so proud of our sovereignty for that. So I'll wrap up with the history. I know I can ramble. I'm happy to talk to anybody else afterwards. You have my contact information, I believe. We'll make sure that gets passed out. Happy to come talk to your governments, your staffs, your teams to educate. It's important that people recognize the tribes who are in their backyard and have those government-to-government relationships that we as sovereigns are entitled to make. So, Chairman?
Thank you, Dalton. Definitely didn't go into detail, obviously, with the history, but I definitely would suggest reading into it because often now people, even to us, they say, you're a gaming tribe, you're a casino tribe, you're a casino Indian. No, we're not a casino Indian. If you ask me, I call it that thing over there that sits in Elk Grove is just a resource for my people, but that's not who we are. What makes us indigenous is our land. And I've always said since coming into my role, watching my mother do her thing as a child and seeing everything she did, the most important thing that I took in from that is that in the position that we're in now is using Wilton Rancheria as an example to all the tribes in California on how you can make the relationships work with those communities that you're within. Mr. Soon there, he understands that in Elk Grove, we have a bond. I know sometimes people, it's lip service about, oh, we have a great relationship with our partner. We have a great relationship with our community. When I say that, I mean it. And it's because of those conversations that we have. And it's that understanding that I can respect you as long as you respect me. And I'm going to say what I need to say. And I think that's something that Elk Grove has shown us. But when we say we want to be that example, we want to. We want to. There's a lot of opportunities that tribes have. When you talk about the status of land going into trust, how can that be a benefit to a city? How can that be a benefit to a county? I'm obviously not going to say here today, but you guys will hear some major headlines in the weeks to come about some of the things that we're doing in our community. And it's an exciting time. I definitely have to give a shout out to my cousin Chris Franklin because some of these things that we've been working on in economic development is coming through him and me. And it's a beautiful day. Us as leaders, for any politicians that are in here, sometimes people say that I'm a politician. And I tell people, no, I'm not a politician. I'm a leader. And leaders lead and make the right decisions for their people, not for themselves and not for something specific, but for my people. And sometimes often, and I know for those of us who are in that world, you often hear the words loyalty, you often hear some of these words, and even in Indian country, it's a little bit harder for us because our community is our family. It is your blood, or it's somebody that you've known for many, many years. When you think about elections and things that happen in cities, you don't have no ties to those people. But in Indian country, it's a smaller group. And so I often have to tell even my own family that I'm not loyal to you. Not loyal to you. I'm loyal to what sits up on our wall, and that's the seal of Wilton Rancheria. And even as a single tribe of 109 here in California, I'm loyal more to California. And even on a bigger level, I sit in that. But I really want to just say that I'm hopeful that we could make this more of a reoccurring thing, because I really do want to use our tribe and our county and our city and our region as an example of what tribes could do. I know Southern California, some of those bigger gaming tribes down there, they've had the experience, they have that wisdom of being up in gaming a lot longer than we have. But I know that up here, I think what we have is those relationships. It's a little bit more personal up here, and we could make it more personal. And so I really want to see what we could do together, because you just don't have Wilton Rancheria in this region. You have several tribes in this region that we could really probably build some beautiful things. Again, when you talk about trust status and what that means to tribes and what we could do to help out cities and counties, that's definitely something that we're interested in exploring. I think you guys know about the JPA connector, the connector that's going to be coming from I-5, coming right in front of our beautiful facility, and then connecting all the way up. There's a lot of opportunities there, and we're definitely interested in having those conversations. But again, like I said, in a few weeks, I think you'll probably understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. I just can't spill the beans right now. But we are definitely working on some major moves here at Wilton Rancheria, and it's to benefit my people, but also the community that we're in. And so with that, in closing, as it was mentioned earlier, yes, tomorrow is the 56th annual California Native American Day. And the theme is protecting our people through sovereignty, past, present, and future. And when we thought about this theme, as I'm a member, I'm a board member of the California Tribal Chairmen's Association. It's an association organization, it's the biggest one in the United States. There's 109 federally recognized tribes here. We're broken down into a southern region, central region, and a northern region. There's a 9 executive board that sits on that sits. I'm one of the board members that sits there. I'm also the chairman of the central region. And so again, I have ties to many tribes in our region here. Our region goes from the tipping point of the Grapevine at Tajon. It goes obviously east and west, and it goes all the way up to Rolling Hills and Pasquenta. And so there's a lot of opportunities for tribes to work together with some of these counties. Why not use ours as that example? It's definitely something that I think that we have more in common than different, but we have to get to this place to sit across the table and have those conversations and really just be genuine with one another. But I think we might have time for a few questions, but again, would love to come back, because I don't think you could cover everything that we're doing in one session, but it was important for us today to just talk a little bit about the history of our people, because again, it's important to understand where you come from to know where we're going to go. And that's something that I was taught. Again, I just want to thank Mr. Jennings as well. As I was walking in, we had a small conversation, and it just reinforces what I already know. When you know that the knowledge that this man has is the same knowledge that I'm learning from my people and my elders and whatnot. But it's a beautiful thing that he was even willing to share that knowledge with me. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. It says something about you, but I believe those nuggets should be given out as much as you can, right? So thank you for that, but I would love to open it up if anybody has any questions or comments.
Any questions?
Chair Kennedy.
Mr. Desmond. and we'll
Thank you, Mr.
make
Chair.
our way around.
Just actually a comment. Chair Tarango and Dalton, it's great to see you. You know, it was wonderful to have you at the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors meeting last week and presenting you with a resolution recognizing Native American Day in Sacramento County. So thank you for being there. And I also had a chance, I first met you as part of our Race, Equity, and Inclusion work group down in Elk Grove. And just appreciate so much hearing from you, learning from you, and the connection and the relationship that this body is building with you, and certainly Sacramento County and other, you know, the city of Elk Grove. Your experience, your wisdom is incredibly relevant to the work that we are doing here as an organization, helping us understand where the inequities, injustices have occurred, not just in the transportation context, but in other contexts, and help us identify what we can do to correct those, you know, going forward. Not just not make the same mistakes, but how can we correct some of those things within our sphere of influence. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you. And Dalton, I may hit you up for a recommended reading list. I mean, because you are an amazing historian. Do you lecture? I mean, you at universities or something? Because thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Stollard.
I wanted to say thank you so much for coming today and sharing so eloquently the history of your people and your aspirations. I would like to say that Yolo County is the home of the Yotatehi Band of the Winton Indians. And I started in public service in 1995 when all they had was a tin building and a bingo hall. And now they've got a over $200 million facility. And the point I want to make is, and it's not been a smooth road, it never is, but everybody pressed forward. And from the time they started, even to this day, they are the most generous group of people in our county. We all go to them for resources. They recently gave $2.5 million to our Yolo County Crisis Nursery Center. They put an equal amount into our homeless shelter in Woodland. They always come forward with big hearts and generosity. Also, and they really take care of their people, and they take care of the land of our agencies in Yolo County and our city, incorporated cities. Nobody is more committed to sustainability than that group of indigenous people. Of course, they have plenty of resources to help them, but nevertheless, they have led the way in a number of areas in terms of environmental consideration. I just think we're all so much better together, and we can learn from each other. And hearing you talk today is so important for us to enlarge our consciousness also about what's going on around us and what has gone on in the past that needs to be redressed. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Director Swin.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Director Stollard's comments, but also, in addition to thanking you, Chairman Tarango, Chris, and Dalton for being here, you know, leaders come along, and you were talking about leadership earlier. Leaders come along at certain times, and I just am so proud to be, you know, connected with you through the city of Elk Grove. You are a product of Elk Grove, having gone to Elk Grove High School, and but you are the right leader for your people at this time, truly, and you've demonstrated that in the past several years that we've seen you since you took the chairmanship over, and what you've done for your people, I think is amazing. And so I just wanted to recognize that and commend you and your entire team. All of us here, I believe, look forward to continuing to work with you into the future, and can't wait to hear the announcements to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Haddishell.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll speak on behalf of all of us in Placer County that we certainly have an appreciation. You know, in Roseville, we've had for a decade plus the Maidu Natural Museum, and it's a wonderful learning tool that's visited by school-age children and help them understand. And I focused in on your word shared. You know, we share this landscape. So not only in my role as a public servant, as the mayor of the city of Roseville, but, you know, in my day job working for Northern California Water Association, I have an appreciation for how, like farmers and growers, your folks cherish the land and the natural resources that are out there. I know I'll be up in the Pitt River in October with a couple of, there's like 11 bands up there. I am not even going to try to pronounce any of those. But, you know, Rosemary will be there, and then we'll have Gregory Wolfen there with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, talking about ensuring protection of surface water quality and groundwater quality. I know a number of the tribes are also growers, and so does the Wilson Band, are they agriculturalists as well?
Currently, no. Really, the only land that we currently have in trust is the land that our facility sits on. The tribe does have about roughly 90 plus acres of land that we'll be proud to say that we had our meeting yesterday with BIA. We're getting ready to move forward to putting that into trust. And, you know, without spilling the beans too much a little bit, and this isn't the major announcement, but, you know, when we talk about sharing and educating people, that was one of the main focal points for us. And so the land that the tribe does own on our historical rancheria is going to be utilized for that. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been to Chase, that's in Pine Grove, California, but it's a state park where my cousin Chris Franklin and my uncle Bill Franklin, who we'll be honoring later on the year at the Capitol, he built a roundhouse there. And those are the things that we want to do. And so when you talk about bringing the community to us to educate them, those are the things that we're into right now. You know, I think that the tribe could easily get into something like that, but I'd have to ask my cousin if that's for economic development. Are we going to do that? But there's some other things that you'll hear about probably in a couple of weeks. But it is one of the fabrics of the people in that area for us. But again, the land that we currently have now is really going to be something that when I took my chairmanship, because we're not rural and we're in the city, a lot of our people don't know their culture. They don't even know the songs, the dances, and I was blessed. I grew up in that. And so one of the biggest things for us as I took my seat was to make sure I bring culture back to my people. And so we have an opportunity right now that we're very excited about. We can't wait to get to work on that, where we could start bringing in the buses from Elk Grove Unified School District or any other school districts that want to come and learn about the people of this area. But to your question, not yet.
Okay. Director Galdo, who knows a little something about buses from Elk Grove.
I can get them there for you. How's that? I think this is just so fascinating to me. I so appreciate you being here. As a child growing up, my mother was raised in the beautiful town of Wendover, Utah, on the border of Utah and Nevada. My grandmother was an elementary school teacher, and one of her parents came to her and said, "Could you take on one of my children?" She was from the Ibapa reservation. And so my aunt is adopted, but we still kept that connection. So we spent every summer going out to Ibapa. And I have to tell you, even as a kid, I knew it's grim. You can't grow a thing out there on the middle of the salt flats. There's no economic opportunity. It was a third world country when you get out there. And so I wonder, and I look at that and I'm so excited to see what you're doing. How did you do it? How did you get the land that you were able to identify a wonderful place to get? I'm curious about the process, because I always thought they're starting 10 steps behind. What are you going to do if you're out there in the middle of nowhere? How does that process work?
Really, I would say it starts with, you know, we've had a long list of leaders in our tribe that had the same vision. And again, any of the stuff that we're doing now, I don't claim to have done it all. I often tell my staff and even people around me that I make it a point to be the least smartest person in the room, right? And I won't use that word of what I would normally say, but I make it a habit of doing that. And it's really a trust in that you have that same common goal, I think. And for our people, it started off our elders when they were going to fight for that recognition that my mom and some of our elders started. Our elders only wanted education and healthcare. That's all they wanted. And from that, we have this beautiful, amazing thing. So I would say the process for us in going into looking at land and whatnot, there's something that's for tribes, you have to look at what's historical to you, you know, and so that helps you out when you're going to the BIA and saying, hey, I'd like to take this land into trust. You have to have some type of ties to it. And so for us, we were able to do that with the land that we have because it's contiguous to the original historic rancheria. And so again, we're hopeful that we could go through that process and make that happen. But the tribe's also looking at other lands that we're interested in buying and maybe in the process of buying now to do the same things. But I would say for us, it's really about why are you doing that? What's the benefit? And for us, it's always been to become self-sufficient. And so we look at different parcels of land like the one that's in our rancheria. That's more educational and culture. Now, some of this other land that we're getting ready to buy, that's more economic. It's economic development. But then, where the tribe also has to be looking at, and we'll get to it soon, is trying to find land for housing for our members. Again, before that thing over there opened up in Elk Grove, 40% of my people live below the poverty line. And so we do have some serious issues with homelessness and just people not being able to maybe start it off on the right foot. And so we definitely have some work. But I would say that when we go to look at land, it's what are we going to use it for? What's the significant use of that land? And then, you build your team up and then you go after it.
Thank you very much. That's all I see from board members. Mr. Corliss, I'd like to ask through you that, recognizing the chairman's comments and the importance of elders, but as well as youth, it's timely. We have on our agenda today recruitment for the Youth Leadership Academy, which we have of representatives of youth throughout the region. It's an opportunity for us and our youth to participate and educate us and also learn from each other. And I think having an Indigenous voice on there would be extremely valuable for youth. And I ask that Mr. Corliss, you'll ask Rosie Ramos to reach out to the tribal leadership and see if we can do some recruiting there. So.
Seems to be already happening in the back of the room. She beat you to it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's an honor. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your lecture, which was extremely enlightening. And I agree with Mr. Desmond. Getting a reading list out to us would be probably a good idea. So, thank you for your time and good luck. All right, we now have our first action item, number 11, which is the Sacramento Regional Emergency Preparedness Strategy for the 6-county region. I believe Barbara von Bechtold is here to present. Yes.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Barbara von Bechtold. I'm on the transportation team here at SACOG, and I'm going to be, thank you, presenting the Sacramento Region Emergency Preparedness Strategy to you today. We're seeking approval from the board for approval of this 6-county strategy.
Barbara, you got to lean into that mic a little bit.
I'm sorry. Better?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I can hear you just fine.
All right. Sitting close by, it makes it easier. We most recently took this final version of the strategy to the Transportation Committee earlier this month, and it was recommended to bring it here to the board for review and approval. The final emergency preparedness strategy and the executive summary are actually as part of your packet with the staff report. And the executive summary is a kind of condensed version of the strategy. It shows the methodology we use to develop the strategy, as well as a summary of key recommendations that are made in the strategy. And I'm just going to go through briefly, that's what we have the presentation up here for, through the methodology and some key recommendations from the strategy. Not every recommendation, there's many in there. And before I start, I'd actually like to make sure we thank Caltrans for the funding that was provided to SACOG through the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program to support the development of the emergency preparedness strategy. Right. Okay, so the region has seen its share of natural disasters and catastrophic events in recent years, and we've seen from those events that interjurisdictional and interagency coordination is really essential to effectively respond to emergency events, especially in deploying public assets. A big part of the strategy is looking at transit and how it integrates into our emergency events and how we react to them. And that we need, in that reaction, to be flexible and organized at the same time in our emergency response, especially for evacuations. That accounts for the role of public transit operators and also how public transportation can be used to facilitate evacuations, especially for people who are transportation disadvantaged. The strategy document isn't intended to replace any existing regulatory or operational emergency management plans or processes or procedures. Instead, we think of it as a toolkit that complements those documents and allows the transit agencies to be better integrated into those plans, processes, and procedures so that emergency management organizations in our region and also neighboring our region as well, we can better cooperate and share information as well as do joint emergency preparedness activities to keep us ready for those events that we know will come in the future. The primary audience for the strategy is our transit operators, but also our offices of emergency services, be they local, statewide, as well as our jurisdictions and other partners like emergency services providers and even volunteer entities to provide services during emergencies. So the purpose of the strategy is to identify emergency preparedness gaps where there's gaps in those plans that are out there now, specifically as they relate to transit, but also the broader transportation system, the infrastructure that's out there, as well as how everyone coordinates during emergencies, and develop recommendations of how we could make those plans that are out there now better. The strategy document, again, is not meant to replace anything, but instead to try to add those transportation issues in where they may not be as robust as they could be. All right. So we have equity and inclusion. There's really a commitment throughout the plan. There's not just one section on it. Throughout the whole strategy, we know that there are groups of folks that it's challenging for them to evacuate during an emergency, especially people with disabilities, people without access to a personal vehicle, be it their own or a family members or friends. And also people have functional needs. They need extra assistance to be able to evacuate. So we're really committed to supporting the needs of those groups as well as others to make sure there's equity in disaster preparedness and resilience and response and recovery to any emergency events that happen. In the region, like I said, also nearby in our neighboring areas. So when we developed the strategy, we had stakeholder engagement. I mentioned some of the stakeholders already. We also had discussions with individual agencies, mega region partners, again, those partners that are outside our SACOG region, tribal government partners, and we also involved the general public through an electronic survey on really what are their evacuation needs, how would they evacuate in the event of an emergency where they had to, and also what kind of communication do they need? Because not everybody we know doesn't have a smartphone, may not have internet access. We need to make sure we get communications about emergencies and evacuations out to everybody in as many of the ways as we can to make sure everyone knows what's happening. All right, there we go. There we are. So one of our next recommendation after the equity recommendation is related to really having relocation plans for our transit operators, and some of them have already done this and some may need to do more, is really looking at how they could, one, maintain their regular service, but also offer those additional services in the event of an evacuation. If their facilities were part of that emergency area that needed to be evacuated, how could they move elsewhere and yet continue providing services for not just storage for their vehicles, but places to fuel them, places for them to be dispatched from, places for them to be maintained if there was some issue with them. So to keep it, have that resilience again in the event of an emergency. And then next is interagency coordination and training. This is probably the biggest part of the strategy. We're looking at for the coordination role, SACOG actually has previously and would continue to serve as a coordinator for regional emergency preparedness, focusing particularly on transportation's role in that preparedness. We've actually hosted previously emergency preparedness tabletop exercises that involve the transit operators and the different offices of emergency services. And then another big thing that our transit operators are working on, and it is a challenge because there's some smaller agencies that don't actually use radios. They use cellular phones or push-to-talk devices to make sure everyone in the event of an emergency could communicate, and how we can do that. And that's not in every plan or process that's out there. So getting them out there so everyone can communicate who needs to we could best serve folks who need to evacuate or need other assistance during an emergency. And then there's mutual aid agreements, again, having those agreements with partners and neighboring areas to make sure that there's somewhere that you know there's going to be resources out there that they can use. Again, in the event mainly for transportation, the event of evacuation. And then those joint training efforts I mentioned before, and planning and response efforts to make sure everyone works together and they know what we could do. How could we do it better as a region? And then also maintaining our relationships, that stakeholder development, but really maintenance now of all the groups. We want to make sure everyone keeps talking to each other, not just as part of the development of the strategy, but ongoing. And that's something we're actually working on now, is to develop a staff advisory committee for emergency preparedness in the region, so that we can keep this discussion going. So it's not just a one-time thing for the strategy, but going forward to, again, make our emergency preparations better now before the next event occurs. And this, coming back, we talked about equity. This is coming back to equity with communications to the public, identifying the folks that need that assistance. Again, focusing on people who rely heavily on public transit or other modes that are not personal vehicles, and how to best communicate with those folks. Again, making sure everyone knows what's happening in the event of an emergency. And then also pickup and drop off policies we've seen in more recent events that have occurred are important. People know where to go. If they can't get themselves out, how can they get out in the event of an evacuation? And then also there's this issue of people getting back when your emergency is over. How can they get back home? And making sure they know where they can go to get back home. And one thing we look at, and have looked somewhat in the past, but looking more at this in the future, is looking at vehicle assets and having even more information in there about those assets. Something we thought of, for our area, we obviously have potential for flooding issues, is looking at how deep could the water be and that bus could still go and assist people in evacuating. Also having emergency management agencies go beyond just the public transit operators, but looking at places like school buses, tribal transit vehicles, or even we have some human service nonprofits that provide transportation. What kind of vehicles do they have? Could they be available? And then also where could they access in the event of an emergency? And then we also looked at zero emission vehicles. Our transit agencies all now have zero emission transition plans as they move towards really the deadline that's coming in 2029, where any new vehicles they purchase here in California will have to be zero emission. We're looking at ways, how could they keep those vehicles operating during an emergency? Like investing, we have emergency storage systems, microgrids, photovoltaics. We've actually heard from some vendors that are building and deploying mobile electric and hydrogen fueling units to keep that resiliency during an evacuation effort. Other things that were looked at in the strategy were measures how to protect zero emission equipment and fueling infrastructure, like fire suppression, having backup equipment elsewhere, like I said, outside of areas. If a transit operator is located in an area that is prone to, let's say, flooding, if they move to another area, do they have backup equipment? Agreements with utility companies to keep power supplies going so those vehicles could continue to be fueled. And also looking throughout our whole region, all of our transit operators, as they move into transitioning to zero emission, is that there's universal fueling infrastructure available. So everyone's not using a different electrical plug to plug in their vehicle. If there's just one variety that they're using, then anybody can fuel anywhere. All right. And then for evacuation, we have transportation strategies. Again, we went beyond looking at just the transit. We also looked at transportation infrastructure and considering strategies how to enhance evacuation through design of facilities, operations, and maintenance of infrastructure, and really looking at things like modifying traffic flows. If there's an evacuation, things like contraflow, where the road goes from being two ways to going all one direction to get everyone out, or conversely back in. Operations on the shoulder, or traffic signal timing where they could hold all the lights green, again, to help everyone either leave or return. And then we come back to equity inclusion. Again, it's throughout the whole strategy. but really the operator is developing targeted emergency evacuation and communication strategies, again, to get to those folks who don't have the smartphone, who don't have the internet, making sure that, they can get a call. We know generally where those populations are, so we can make sure that they have good access to get out of an area if there were an evacuation due to an emergency. So in conclusion, through working all of our stakeholders, we want to help them integrate the strategy's recommendations into their existing emergency preparedness plans to make our region better prepared for the next emergency that comes along and promoting continued safety of all of our residents. So for the strategy, we're going to send it out to all of our stakeholders that helped in the development of it, but also the executive summary and a link to the full strategy will be available on our website. So we have Mike Rawson's information up there, but you could also contact me if you had any questions or wanted to make any other comments about the strategy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Director Stollard.
I think this is terribly important, but if we do all these things, what's to prevent us from having the traffic seize up like it did in Lahaina, like it did in Paradise, like it did in the Oroville Dam evacuation? I mean, it took 12 hours for people to get out of Oroville. And we're so constrained geographically. We don't have lots of options. 80's it between the Bay Area and Sacramento. 50's it between El Dorado County and Sacramento. There are not a lot of options. Have we studied those other situations and to see how we can make traffic flow happen? Or, I mean, everybody's interested in saving themselves, so it's hard to imagine that there's going to be people willing to sit there and force cars off the road because they can't function or whatever. It seems to me that's going to be our choke point in any given situation. Thank you.
Yes, Director Thomas.
To Director Stollard's point, I think the other challenge we have in perhaps implementing these strategies are the current, state of funding in California, whereas in El Dorado County, we're primarily old, gold rush roads through small communities, and we can't find the funding to even enhance shoulders and widen shoulders for evacuation purposes because there's no money for capacity inducing projects. And so those are just important considerations as we look ahead to seeing, how we can implement these strategies, whether it's for transit or for the traveling public and general public. So, interesting strategy. I appreciate it. I guess my other question is the implementation of the strategy. So SACOG has convened this, helped develop this with stakeholders. And so the implementation will be up to individual jurisdictions to embrace these strategies and coordinate among themselves to implement it?
Well, the idea would be that I mentioned we're looking at putting together an emergency preparedness staff advisory committee. So we would bring and keep those groups together, keep them talking to assist with the implementation in their plans, procedures that already exist for this moving forward. And there actually is a portion of the strategy too that talks about some of the funding that is available to do some of the work needed to implement these strategies and existing plans.
Okay, well, thank you for helping to clarify that. Thank you.
Yes, Director Swin.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the information. I think it's an important document. I think to my two colleagues' point that just spoke is the criticalness of the drills, tabletop exercises, and convening that stakeholder group, various law enforcement agencies that I know our other directors here can speak better to, but making sure we do these exercises. It's a very complex exercises when you're talking about individual drivers are just going to jump on the road because they want to get out, and how our governing agencies, Highway Patrol, sheriffs, local police, public works, Caltrans, how are they going to manage that? Again, all that's to say we need to have these, whether it's tabletop exercises or some drills to model what can happen in a specific situation. I think that is going to be critical to see how effective this plan can be and how we can adjust, when needed. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director.
It might be wise also to figure on-site strategies. In other words, you may not be able to get everybody out. We have the concept of defensible space around houses. And if you look at the Paradise situation, there were a lot of parts of Paradise that didn't burn at all because they had enough defensible space and they didn't have the kind of burnable matter all around them. They had a downtown park that still had a green lawn after it was all over. So evacuation may not be the only option. Thank you.
Thank
Director
you.
Stoller, Chair, do you mind, Director Kozlowski? I'm sorry, I just want to make
I've
sure.
I've got a lineup here, so go
I know,
ahead.
I know you do. I just want to make sure we're clear on what this is and what it's not.
Yes, thank you.
This is not a regional evacuation strategy.
Yes, thank
right?
you.
This does not supplant county OESs, and this is, we have shared assets in the region, in this case, transit vehicles, and rather than look in our silos of there's one agency that can go get people out, we're trying to figure out for this particular thing, how do transit agencies share assets, think of it as mutual aid, so that we can deploy those quickly, and there's no, oh, we didn't even think about that we'd need to borrow another county's vehicles to go get people out who can't get out themselves. Your questions about defensible space, evacuation, lessons from Oroville are absolutely valid, but this is not the strategy on regional evacuation. And if you want, because sadly this is probably not going to go away as an issue, we are happy to come back and give you updates on other kinds of evacuation like system operations and reversing flow and everything we should have learned from Oroville. But I just want to be clear, that's not this. We're not trying to solve the regional evacuation thing. We're trying to figure out how do we share mutual aid, the transit vehicle assets.
Thank you. We're going to go next to Director Kozlowski, followed by Director Lozano and Director Branscombe.
Thank you very much for answering my principal question, which is what are we talking about here? As part of your stakeholder group, did you have all of the regional school districts that operate bus fleets as part of this?
We had some of the school districts, not all of them responded when we
Okay,
reached out.
thank you very much.
Okay, Director Lozano. Director Lozano? Okay, let's go to Director Branscombe and we'll figure this one out.
I'm having this spot.
Can you hear us, Director Lozano? Okay. Director Branscombe.
Thank you, sir. I have a great deal of respect for transportation staff at SACOG, and however, I do differ. I have a concern, I should say, about what I heard of the Transportation Committee on this, where I voted against it. Well, I actually not against, I just did not support it. And the reason for my concern is the fact that there's a mandated transition to predominantly electric buses. Well, I think commencing early next year, 40% of all new purchases have to be electric buses. And I'm concerned that in an emergency, once we get to a fully electric bus fleet, and I presume that's the plan, that such a fleet may not be up to the task. And it was mentioned in the discussion then and here that there are new technologies coming along which may mitigate or eliminate that concern. That said, I was simply and remain concerned that the tools may not be up to the task. And while I can support going forward with this, I would suggest a great deal of attention be given to whether those tools will be up to the task. Not just the fact they're electric, would they be up to full charge? Is the hydrogen strategy, is the hydrogen technology really going to work on a mass scale? And would the power companies be up to actually be able to recharge in an emergency? There are concerns there, and those concerns I think need to be noted as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Lozano, now you're off camera. Maybe that will help.
I'm thinking it will. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate the presentation and the investigation into this. My question is have we put a plan together to include some of our mega region partners? I'm thinking more of the San Joaquin area in terms of resources moving forward as maybe a secondary resource for us should we need to use public transit.
And we did actually include the San Joaquin Regional Transit District. They were part of the development of the strategy and all of the items included within it. So yes, we're looking at, like I said, the partners within the region, but also those that neighbor our region as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Director Villegas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to maybe ask staff if, in part because it looks like it's a strategy at first glance, when in fact it's a component of a much larger strategy. As the Transportation Planning Network agency, we have a role to play, and it might make sense to maybe have those that actually are in charge of, say, a broader, larger regional exit. Heaven forbid that we need it, but we all know it's imminent. I mean, we are post-Katrina, the most likely region to be inundated or flooded in some capacity. And so the likelihood that we will need it at some point in some form is very real. So it might be good for this body to hear those that are in charge of utilizing our transportation network system in a larger evacuation, to maybe put it in place for us so we see how it fits into a broader responsibility. It's not our responsibility, but it might fit in nicely to hear somebody tell us how it fits, or what we should be doing to make sure we are ready in the event that we need it.
Yeah, and we can definitely, since we're going to be including the Offices of Emergency Services in that Emergency Preparedness Committee I mentioned, we can definitely talk with them about coming back and talking to the board specifically about how that would work on a regional level if there were a large event like you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm usually too loud. I apologize. Yeah, we can have those Offices of Emergency Services, have them come back to the board and talk about plans if there were a large regional scale event, like Director Villegas mentioned, how they could use our transportation system and infrastructure to get folks out if they needed to.
Director Barrett first, and then, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And good morning for my colleagues who I've not yet met. In my day job, I actually lead the state's community preparedness for the state's fire department. And so I have to say, actually, I really, great questions and great comments, and I do think that the clarification is really important. It does bring up the broader question of, how do we embed this into a more regional strategy? Because, you bring up the Camp Fire and Paradise, and it really went through three, at minimum, different jurisdictions for the residents of Paradise to evacuate from Paradise through the unincorporated, mostly into Chico. And so having a regional strategy of how do we evacuate those who cannot is critical, because if you look at the 85 fatalities that occurred in the Camp Fire, if you look at the fatalities from Lahaina and really any of the major wildfires, they're due to people who weren't able to evacuate timely. They waited too long, many of them, as was pointed out in the presentation, because they physically could not do that. And so I think that you did a really good job of looking into those things and bringing in to consideration things like electric vehicles, and how do we answer the question of how do you keep them charged. And the conversation about, in most major wildfires, there is power shutoffs occurring at the same time. And so how do you make sure that the fleet is maintained in all that? The temporary refuge areas is a good discussion, the defensible space and the funding to do that. And I would, again, just an alternate on this board, but very much encourage that, that the group look at a broader strategy that this could fit into, because this, for what the focus is, from my perspective, again, is really good. And so appreciate the staff time and definitely appreciate the report.
Thank you.
You're an alternate who knows something.
Thank you and welcome. Director Joyner. And then we're going to cut it off. We're running behind because the chair wasn't about to cut off the leader of a sovereign nation.
Smart man. So the observation's already been made post-Katrina. I think that's especially for the Sacramento area.
a case study that we really need to take a hard look at because the transit systems collapsed and we're unable to get a lot of folks out. But my curiosity here is, and I didn't see it anywhere in the report, do we consider rail to be transit, and how can we bring rail assets to bear in the case of a very large evacuation of an area? Because most of our communities are connected by rail.
Yeah, we looked more at buses just because they can go more places, obviously. But we did actually have the Capital Corridor folks were involved in the strategy development too. So that was a part of the consideration of how you could get folks out. But again, if there were water inundation, those kinds of things, I think we
Yeah,
talked about
sure.
earlier, it would depend on the level and being able to safely get folks out. So yes, it was considered, but no, it wasn't a large part of the strategy.
All right, thank you. Very briefly, just because of your expertise.
Only because I've done this a few times. So I'm so excited about the conversation. Back when the Oaken Hills fire and everybody showed up and we couldn't connect our fire hydrants and we couldn't communicate to share, we got the SEM system. So we're all on a standardized management system. If you go back and look at New Orleans and you remember the pictures, they showed the flooding and there were 200 buses sitting in a parking lot, school buses, because nobody had done the foresight to prepare. We do it in the school system. I've sent buses to Rio Casumas to evacuate. I've sent buses to San Diego to evacuate because we're in regular contact. And that's the really critical piece of this. Nothing happens 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So you've got to have those numbers to be able to reach out to get everybody when you can. We absolutely practice it. We do it, keep it updated. I can tell Director Branscombe, the good news and the bad news is your fleet is as old as Methuselah. You're not going to be all electric for a long time. Average school buses run 25 years. So we've got time to work on that piece, and we still will have alternative fuels out there. But please work with your school system. They're doing it already. We stay in contact across the state constantly for this very reason. So it's there, and they just kind of got forgotten as a resource. So I'm thrilled to have that conversation, that you'll bring people together.
Yeah, that's our goal.
Thank you, Director. Okay, is there any member of the public that would like to address the board on this item? Seeing none, is there any, Mr. Clerk?
We do have one member of the public with their hand raised.
Okay,
We
please
have
call
Alan-
that member.
Alan Hirsch. Give me one moment. All right, Mr.
And you're
Hirsch.
keeping the time, right?
I have the timer ready.
Thank you.
Mr. Hirsch, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. I have two thoughts. One is the key to get people evacuated is alerting them. So the old time town horns would be very important. We saw we can't count on cell phones for lots of reasons. People need to look at their cell phones. So urging all the cities to put in town horns and having the noon horn back in would make a small town atmosphere and also have a police warn people. The second is we see the failure of a privatized public transportation system in these crises. One bus which will hold 30 people takes the space of 2 cars that'll hold maybe 3 or 4. So we need to have better transit, and we need to have people who are aware that transit works and can use it and know how it all works. And we have, like in Yolo County, the most wildfire endangered city is Winters. And we only have 3 buses a day leaving it. People aren't used to using transit in these towns. We need to put transit in. I just took a trip with my wife to Denver, Salt Lake City, and Reno. We took our bicycles aboard Amtrak. We bicycled around all their towns. Let me tell you, these towns, especially Denver, have an amazing transit system, and they put our community to shame. Amazing transit and bike system, actually, that put our community reason to shame. And Yolo County in particular has really inferior transit. And again, the Amtrak corridor is really weak, and the Yolo bus is very sporadic service. And we need to address that. So public transit has other values for resiliency beyond just the privatized private system, which fails chronically because of the lack of capacity in our road system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. With that, is there a motion? Chair will move. Is there a second? Was Director Desmond? We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that alternate Director McCauley has stepped in for Director Burris.
Thank you.
Directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Aye.
McCauley for Burris? Director McCauley, if you could indicate your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Chapman? Desmond? Berlant Dowden Calvillo? Frost? Absent. Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog?
Yes.
Gore?
Aye.
Early for Guerrero?
Aye.
Harris?
Yes.
Haudashelt?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Nisley?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
The motion is to accept this report.
To approve it.
Approve the report, then yes.
Lauren?
Aye.
Lozano?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Stollard? Soon?
Aye.
Thomas? Bang? Absent? Villegas? West?
Yes.
Vice Chair Saragosa?
Aye.
And Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Which takes us to item number 12, Green Means Go Grant Submittal, Federal Regional Partnership Challenge. I believe that Garrett Ballard-Rosa is here to present.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A truncated presentation. So Green Means Go, of course, is our homegrown program to meet state and regional local objectives, shared objectives around community revitalization and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. You might recall earlier this year, this board acted on the first ever Green Means Go funding round, awarding over $34 million for infrastructure improvements in your local communities, what we call green zones. But that was one-time funding. So one-time funding coming for Green Means Go. In the Lunar Committee this year, we've been talking a lot about how do we build off of that momentum of Green Means Go. Of course, how do we execute on that $34 million in awards, how we can provide technical assistance, but of course, how we can also get the next wave of funding to get into those local green zones, those local communities. So we've been looking at state and federal funding opportunities. We think we found one at the federal level called the Regional Partnerships Challenge. The ask here today is authorize our executive director to move forward with that application. We'll be partnering with 10 jurisdictions and a set of community partners to, again, bring some funding into those local green zones that also meet the federal designation of underserved. We do some planning work, complemented some transportation planning work, complemented with some non-transportation looks at infrastructure and at housing. So again, the idea would be the work comes in, it gets that community fully ready for development. Truncated version, again, we're really excited about it. We're going to be competing nationally, so we've been lining up a lot of support, and we think the foundation we've laid with Green Means Go, all the work you've been doing over the last several years, is going to help us distinguish ourselves at the national level as we compete for those funding. So let me know what questions you might have.
Any questions, Garrett, at this time? Comments?
Through the chair.
Yes,
Move to approve.
we have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Kozlowski? Okay. Please call the roll.
Directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Aye.
McCauley for Burris? Director McCauley, can you indicate your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Chapman? Desmond? Berlant for Dowden Calvillo? Frost? Absent. Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog?
Yes.
Gore? Early for Guerrero?
Aye.
Harris?
Yes.
Haudashelt?
Go.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Nisley?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lauren? Director Lauren, can you indicate your vote?
Go.
Looks like having some technical difficulties. Absent. Lozano?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Stollard?
Aye.
Soon?
Aye.
Thomas? Bang? Absent. Villegas? West? Vice Chair Saragosa?
Aye.
Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
Motion carries. I will also like to.
Lauren was aye.
Oh, thank you. I'll note for the
Sorry.
record, Dr. Lauren was aye, and there was no public comment on this item.
Thank you very much. And Garrett, you get the Employee of the Month award. Okay, next item is item number 13, updates on the Racial Equity Action Plan Progress Report. Casey Lizon and Katie Brunetti.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. Can you hear me?
Not great.
Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, I will be the one presenting this a truncated report, but the main thing that I want to share with you is it's in your packet. If you're electronic, it has a big yellow cover. It's SACOG's progress on Racial Equity Action Plan implementation. The main thing that I want to call your attention to is a reminder of what this Racial Equity Action Plan is. It's been almost a year since your board adopted it. You adopted it last October. And since that time, your staff has been implementing it. We've had the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group since January starting to dig into this, understand what we are doing, weighing in on different aspects of it. And one of the parts of this action plan is that we monitor how we're doing in its implementation and we report on it. That is to ensure that we can achieve one of the goals, which is to maintain your board's consistent engagement in the implementation of the plan. So the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group over the summer saw the first draft of an implementation report. It is very comprehensive. Your staff, Katie Brunetti, leading a team, worked very hard to put together this report for you. So what I think is very helpful if you are going to be diving into this is to understand that when your board adopted a racial equity statement of change and commitment, and remember that was in the beginning of 2022, you committed to, as SACOG, trying to work towards a just and equitable region that addresses historic wrongs and where health and economic outcomes for all groups are improved. And so to do that, included in that statement of change and commitment were a number of commitments. One of those was to listen and learn. The next was to plan, including creating an action plan, to then act, support, and measure our work. And all of that is detailed in the action plan. What happened after you adopted that statement was that your staff then went and started in on the listen and learn part. So we engaged stakeholders in the region, city and county staff, transit agencies, your RTPA partners, community-based groups that we work with regularly, with our economic development partners in the region. So we did a listen and learn tour from them saying, look, this is what the board has done with this racial equity statement. What can SACOG do as a government agency to try to implement this statement, commit to this? We also interviewed all of the members of the REI working group, which included board members as well as local community leaders who work in the equity space. From that listen and learn session, the goals of the Racial Equity Action Plan were created. So all of the goals in that plan come from that listen and learn period. And then staff developed, with the oversight of the REI working group, all of the objectives and the actions that will help us to get to those goals. So I wanted to make sure to remind you of that's what's in the action plan. And then the report that's in front of you is demonstrating what progress we are making on implementation in a very comprehensive way. So as much as you engage in the action plan via hearing about how the Engage, Empower, Implement program is going, or having workshops in your tour of the region, or weighing in on blueprint engagement, this kind of wraps all of the Racial Equity Action Plan work into one document so that you can review it. With that, I will stop because I know we're running behind. Happy to answer any questions and also take feedback on the report because it is a living document and we want to make it clear, as clear as possible for your use.
Questions, comments of the board? Looking around.
I would just say, as the chair of REI, what Casey just described to you is really happening in real time. My parents taught me early in life that you plan, you organize, you implement, you monitor, you recognize. And we've done the planning aspect of it. We are now in the implementation, as she described. Then we will continue to monitor for success to the point that we can recognize the great accomplishments that we've been able to make happen. So we are in that process. If you have any questions, please contact me directly. I'd love to talk to you about it. If you want to get more involved in it, we would like to talk to you about that as well. So great job, Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Any others? No, but thank you for the work from the working group and also staff. Good work. All right, that is an information item, which takes us to item number 14, the Youth Leadership Academy recruitment. Rosie.
Good morning, Rosie Ramos, project manager for YLA. Excited to be here for our sixth cohort. Yes, we've done 5 years. This is our sixth one. We've worked with just about 200 students from the 6 counties, and so we're really excited to open up another cohort. We will be having 40 spots available again this year. We will be doing the program fully in-house as we did last year, and we will be sending out digital toolkits to you all to help us recruit. You did receive a flyer in your staff report, but we will follow up with some digital toolkits with images, social media posts that you can, reshare for us, and and also able to create any other content that you might need specifically to your jurisdiction. But we're very excited for those of you that are new to the board or to YLA. As a reminder, it's our way that we engage with our youth across the region. We really, Chairman Tarango said it best this morning, youth are a really important part of our communities. And so this program is really a way for us to engage and connect with folks that maybe otherwise wouldn't have connected. Civic engagement and teaching them about the work that StateCog does, the work that your jurisdictions are doing, the work that you all are doing as leaders is really important to continue or to engage with them, and then they can see a path into this hopefully in the future. It's always great when they come and sit around this table and ask really great questions to our board, to James, to us as staff, and so it's really exciting to be able to continue to do this. I'm going to keep it brief because I know we're running out of time, but happy to take any questions. The application is open today. The application is live on our website. We will go until November 10th. In October, I plan to come back and give you a summary of where we're at, so the cities and counties can kind of see how many students we're getting from each place. Our goal is always to have good regional representation. We always want to have at least one student from each jurisdiction. It's a little tough sometimes with different communities, but we're really trying to make sure that we get that regional representation. And then we're also really focusing on our Title I schools within our environmental justice communities to ensure that we're giving students that might not already have an opportunity to engage in these processes as much as an opportunity to engage with us. So I'll keep it short. Happy to take any questions. If you're interested in participating, please reach out. We always have guest speakers with our board. It's always a fun time. I know many of you have already participated with us, and the students really look forward to that. And our first session will be January 27th. We're going to kick off with the Strengths Finders work to really help students understand their natural talents, how to become better leaders, and then graduation will be June 1st, so you can mark your calendars already. Thanks.
Rosie, when can we expect to see this hitting the materials you're sending out to hit our emails?
I think whenever we send a follow-up for this meeting, we should include that in the packet. And then it's also available on our website. You can download the entire toolkit there. So we'll link it and attach.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
And to my colleagues here who may be involved in recruiting students for this youth program, also often in Rancho we have several of these. And the gatherings become meetings of the valedictorians of the various schools in Rancho Cordova. And the process they go through, with us becomes item 25 on their 28-point college resume. That I don't think is my target for this. So anything we can do to encourage the kid who is not already engaged in 17 other activities, I think would be great. This should be the alternative for the smart kid perhaps who has not engaged before or something like that, or the underrepresented community. I think that should really be the goal, not just, so I really appreciate sort of your last paragraph there of your presentation. I want to be sure everyone paid attention to that aspect of it.
Yeah, thank you for elevating that. And I will mention that the application is easy and simple for students. It doesn't require tons of, having to have done applications before, but it does just require intent and wanting to learn. And so we have just 4 questions that really ask about, what's your story? What makes a good leader? Why are you interested in YLA? And so really trying to make it a not too burdensome application process for students and have an open door for all different backgrounds.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Sander, for your comments. Anyone else?
Through the chair?
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, what are the age ranges?
Oh, thank you. High school, so 9th through 12th grade.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rosie. Good work.
Thanks.
That takes us to our reports. I don't have any report other than to say, is there some way we can get that microphone to work better?
That part.
Takes us to board reports. Is there any board member that has a burning issue that they would like to bring up at this time?
Well, I do. Right?
Out of shell. Go ahead.
I believe I do. Remember this month, remember this day. The Federal Department of Transportation is expected either today or tomorrow to officially announce the grant funding awards through the CRISI program and the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority and the Roseville to Sacramento or Sacramento to Roseville third track project is on the list. So it's very exciting. That will take us to 3 round trips and soon to 10. And Mr. Corliss, I think you can add something to that conversation, can't you?
I'd just say this is, well, a lot of effort on the Capital Corridor board, but yes, Mega Region Working Group, this is one of the Mega Region dozen. The 4 of you, including Director Gore, who's chairing that group this year. We had a lobby day earlier this year. We've been working very hard on this. You have been working very hard on this. We put a lot of political capital both back in DC. We've carried the Mega Region project list now 2 years in a row. And I couldn't join you this past year, but when I was at Cap to Cap a year and a half ago, it was this project list and the fact that our regions were coordinating and supporting each other's grant applications that actually took our federal partners by surprise in a good way. So our fingers are very much crossed on this. And I will just say too, this project has a SACOG revolving match grant on it. Remember the revolving match program is if you don't have local money, we loan you the money to go get state and federal money. So again, fingers crossed, we get some good news on this in the days ahead.
And it's been a labor of love for over a decade, you know, with a lot of people. I just happened to be, as I shared with some people, I just happened to be standing on the platform when the train came in. So, you know, it's the final round of funding to get us there.
Thank you, Director Gore.
First, I would like to say that Director Baines is a man of his word. And last month, when I asked where we could get some peaches, he said, well, I'll bring you some. And he did. So thank you very much, Director Baines, the fact that you remembered. And so if any of you, there's maybe 12 of them here, but if anybody would like a can of peaches, because I'm going to keep one myself at least.
So there's actually some in the break room as well. But,
all right. Yeah. Thank you. I'll keep more than, just one, but come on over and get one. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Baines. Yes, Director Gallo.
Hey, following up on peaches, so I was out in Yuba City doing the tour, got to see the new LDS temple and do that. A lot of us were out there. And as I was there, I said, where do I go get peaches? Because I'm out here, there's got to be the best farm. And he said, follow me, which I did not realize meant follow me to Live Oak out. I thought it was taking me out there to kill me or something. We were out in it was fantastic. And I came home, I hate to tell Dr. Gaines, but I came home with bags of fresh peaches, and everyone in my family and my neighbors were pretty darn happy. And it is a fabulous opportunity to go see what you're doing out there. So thank you.
Okay, I detect a peaches theme. Yes, Vice Chair.
I should have brought some figs in from all my trees today. That's all I think I'm thinking of now. But no, just a quick update. We had a CalCog meeting earlier this week, yesterday. I don't know. The days all blend together. But anyways, not a lot really going on. There's a lot going on, but just one thing I wanted to highlight in terms of legislation, the bill to allow for some remote meetings failed this year. Again, I think there's still a lot of pushback at the legislature about the idea of really being in person and having people be able to see you, the public, be able to have that personal touch, even though we know that there are boards and commissions that you aren't directly elected to, like SACOG, like other boards that we all serve on, that are, a little bit different in nature. So that conversation is going to continue next year to see if there's some ability to maybe catch up to technology as well. So that's an ongoing discussion, but just wanted to kind of bring that forward to the group.
Thank you. Director Stollard.
On Monday, the Yolo Transportation Agency launched Beeline, a on-demand transit service in the city of Woodland. I mentioned this especially to other mid and smaller jurisdictions. It's a great way to provide transit for your community. It's a dial-up service. Beeline, you can get the app yourself if you want to see what it looks like. We're really happy to it. I want to congratulate Dr. early, I don't know if she's still here, but they pioneered this in West Sacramento, the first in the entire United States. So it's really cool. We have 4 vans running around. They hold 8 people. You can get it to your house or nearby rather and take you where you want to go. And it's on demand. So it's working. I want to thank Director Lauren. She's also from Winters. She participated helping this get us done. And Director Chapman from Davis, who's also sitting on that board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Director Thomas.
Well, would like to invite all of you up to beautiful El Dorado County. Apple Hill is in full swing, and I had the privilege of touring Senator Marie Alvarado Gill yesterday to experience our generational family farms and businesses, and was pleasantly surprised to hear from all of the growers and vineyard owners that the crops this year are fantastic. And after 3 years of loss, we need a good crop, and in fact, Senator and I even had the opportunity at Boger Winery to be on the crush line and pulling the debris out of the grapes, and it was sticky with sugar. And so we invite you to enjoy our bountiful crop this year, and just really appreciate everyone's support of our beautiful, bountiful region.
Thank you, Director.
And as you go to Apple Hill, of course, stop and eat and shop in Placerville.
And on
And on your way back, that's right.
Channeling Clarici.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, I wanted to thank Director Stollard for mentioning the Beeline. We're really excited about it, but I'm here to invite all of you to Winters on September 30th for Festival de la Comunidad. It's a Carnitas festival. There's food trucks. There's all kinds of bands. There's norteño bands. There's going to be a Oaxacan banda. But it's September 30th, 3:30 to 10:30. And it'll be full of local food and beer, sangria, all the good things. So hope you guys could come.
Thank you very much. Look forward to that, Director. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Just one real quick thing, another agricultural product to promote a little bit. It is pumpkin season. Bishop Pumpkin Farm is open. And this year on September 30th, they're going to host the National Pumpkin Weigh-Off. So come up to Wheatland. They're open until the first week of November, so love to see you there.
All right, any other crops we want to mention? Yes.
I'll just mention,
That's good.
In Rancho Cordova this weekend, the airplanes are in blossom.
Right.
It's a noisy process, so we apologize to the region for the noise of the
Maybe dropping
blossoming.
fruit is what-
But there will not be any to take home, unfortunately. You have to go there to consume them.
And it shouldn't be as sticky. Anybody? Yes.
I wasn't going to mention it, but we do have an eggplant festival.
Oh,
October
geez. Oh, that poor
October
crop.
7th in Loomis, October 7th.
I believe that brings us to Mr. Corliss's report.
I think we should hear more about the eggplant. I mean, it is, look, one of the truly great things about this region and this board is the food. The food and the drink, right? It brings us together. So I do have actually some pretty important updates here. I hope you all are getting the weekly, or not the weekly, the bi-monthly executive director update that should come to your inboxes. If you don't see those, please let us know. So a few things on my end, and I've got some dates on here. So if you've got calendars, please pull them out because it's important. But first off, I just want to say it was a real honor to have Chairman Tarango this morning, and I want to assure you that what that represents in the chairman's remarks this morning is what I hope is the beginning of a good working relationship and a meaningful working relationship with actually all the tribes in this region. So we are reaching out and engaging the other tribes, and when that time is right, we will also make similar invitations to the other chairs of those tribes. Assembly Bill 350, AB 350, that is the bill to extend the timeline on our long-range plan. This has not been an easy journey or an endeavor, as some of you know, but we are on the very last step of this. We got through the Assembly with a 74-0 vote. Very happy to have our regional delegation fully in support. We're now on the governor's desk. If your jurisdictions have had support letters, we're going to be reaching back out and trying to get support letters for the governor to sign the bill. And one thing that's coming soon, and I'm going to, if those of you here are serving as mayor of your jurisdiction, of your city, we have a mayoral sign-on letter, and I have a copy here. I'm going to email you something, or if you are not the mayor of your jurisdiction, but you can hand this over to your mayor. It would be great to get every mayor in the region to sign this letter to show the governor of the administration how important this bill is. So I have that here for you waiting. And governor has till October 14th to sign bills. So we're leaving no stone unturned and trying to make sure that we do get that signature. And we can line our plan up with the Bay Area, at least in the meantime, and the transportation funding keeps flowing to the region. Okay, a couple of dates. So October 19th, your next board meeting, Thursday, October 19th. That will be the last offsite board meeting of the year. We're going to hit all 6 counties in a 2-year period. We will be back here in Sacramento County, but we will be in South Sacramento at the Maple Community Center. It's an offsite board meeting. Following that, to your question, Director Baines, is the tour. We're actually going to get a bus. We're going to have a lot of community members and organizations come in who are working in South Sacramento. This is part of our commitment to the Race Equity Inclusion Initiative and the Engage, Empower, Implement program. I know it's a chunk of your time to stay until 2 p.m., but I'm assure you it's going to be worth it, and there will be really good food, just to keep that theme going. So please do RSVP. I think you've had individual invitations from Mia Lopez and our staff. We would love to have you there. Chair Kennedy, this is somewhat your home turf, and there's a lot of really great things happening in South Sacramento that are very germane to our work here. So October 19th, board meeting following with a tour. Please RSVP. Valley Vision, our partner, is having a livability summit, their 2nd annual. October 30th, we are a sponsor of this. If you are a SACOG board member, you get a comped ticket. So that's in your email. Please let us know if you can attend that. The following board meeting will be a week early. The following November board meeting, to avoid CSAC, will be November the 9th. So that's a week early, Thursday, November 9th, and we'll be offsite again, this time at Sacramento State. President Luke Wood is going to open up the meeting, and this is going to be a joint board meeting. We're going to have our SACOG board meeting to start at 9 a.m. So you're half an hour early on November the 9th. And then we're going to roll right into somewhat historic board meeting, which is going to be joint between SACOG, Sacramento Regional Transit, SMUD, and the Sacramento Metro Air District. And your esteemed chair here chairs 3 of those 4 bodies, and so it's going to be easy for him to control the meeting. I assure you that while we are doing a deep dive in coordination in Sacramento County, and the topic will be climate resilience, adaptation, emergency preparedness, getting together to get federal funding, we're going to also make sure we go around the region and give an opportunity to talk about not just Sacramento County, but what's happening in the other counties. Director Berlin, I really appreciate your comments this morning. Office of Wildfire Resilience, for example, in El Dorado County, the groundwater bank here as a regional water authority project. So we truly want to make it regional with the deep dive in Sac County. And then in December, we're back here with your final board meeting of the year at the end of December, December 21st, a little bit late this year, but please make sure you can make that and have it on your calendar. So you can't make December 21st, let us know. That's the 3rd Thursday, just a little bit later. I know it bumps up a little bit to the holidays, so all important dates. We really want to have you participate. Thanks again for this morning, and of course, you're going to hear more about Youth Leadership Academy. Think about those high school students. Think about those Title I schools. Director Sander, exactly as you say. Think about those students who are not typically doing the 17 things to put on their brag sheet when it comes to senior year. Think about those other students that would really get a lot out of this. I know from experience, I know Chair Kennedy has this too. When I come and talk to the Youth Leadership Academy, they ask the most incisive, toughest questions I've ever heard. And many of them keep coming back after a year of Youth Leadership Academy and become mentors for those students the next year. So it's a really cool program. Love to get regional representation. Thanks very much. Great to see you all this morning, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the board. Today was a particularly good meeting of a lot of give and take and productive comments, and really appreciate the insight and thoughtfulness that the
Chair
board put
Kennedy.
into the meeting. I also want to give one more plug. I will follow up on James, that the meeting in South Sacramento, I really hope that people can come in person to that meeting as much as possible. I think you're going to see some ways that our regional bodies, including especially SACOG, have really stepped up in an area that needs it direly and will, I think, change the area for generations to come. Anything else, Mr. Clerk?
No, we are good to adjourn.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
All right, good job.